very much the final few with a PH of our independent thinking online book children's book festival that we'll be doing in partnership with the Sue Atkins Book Club, where she's brought together through lockdown. She's brought together all sorts of children's authors covering all sorts of different topics, books for parents, books that are relevant for teachers as well, anybody working in education. Children in the room as well making a noise. We'll have energy here. And it's been such a privilege for me. I've been able to speak to just people I would never have come across before, these amazing authors with their stories. There's always a story within the story, and there's always something important to say to help us as adults bring the best out of children. And this one fits that bill as well. Please stay here, I want you near, which makes you weep, just the title.
Sorry, it's a bit emotional.
Written by Dr Sarah Mundy, who's joining us now. So hi Sarah, welcome to this. And just tell us a little bit about you, about your work, about what you do, and why you decided to put that together as well. I mean, this is just one of a whole fleet of books you've got to help children. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you. And before I go into sort of my background, I wanted to say thank you so much, because you've given the same spiel at the beginning of each one of these over and over again. And Wales lost last night, so I did wonder if you'd be okay today. So sorry for Wales, and it was a proper defeat, wasn't it? But next time, there's always next time. So yeah, thank you very much, because your interviews are fab. I've been dipping into them throughout the weekend with the children around, sort of 1 year in, 1 year playing FIFA at the same time, but they've been great, so thank you. So yeah, my background, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've worked with children and families for about 20 years. I work mainly with children who are adopted, so have experienced early adversity, and so the approach I take is an attachment-focused approach, so help them learn to trust adults, to feel that the world is safe, that adults are predictable and secure, and so I therefore also help their parents provide that sort of security. And what I've sort of learned through my clinical work is that actually when a child has a coherent story about their experiences and themselves, that's not shaming, that's not about them being bad, but that's about helping them understand the world, take control of the world, understand their feelings, they cope much better. It's actually a really good predictor of positive mental health, of good emotional health, if you can make sense of things. You know, if you're not confused, if you're not overwhelmed, life is easier. So I always had this sort of idea that storytelling was really important, as I think everyone here knows, and I've used it regularly clinically, sort of helping children through therapeutic stories, writing their own stories with them. And then I had my own child, and he got to about 2, and as a experienced psychologist, I thought I'd be able to manage the terrible twos, as they're called. And I realised actually it was quite harder than I'd been telling parents for the last 10 years. And I thought that it would be useful to explore what was out there. But all of the literature at that time, it's very different now, was very behavioural. It was do this to your child rather than work with your child to help them understand what's going on. So then a little seed dropped about 10 years ago, and I decided to write a series of children's books, interactive. So they're conveying a parent who is good enough, so helping them become more secure, being there, being available, but they're also helping the child make sense of their world. So each of the books addresses sort of a common dilemma that we all go through, normal developmental stuff. But what it doesn't just talk about the characters' experiences, but under the flaps, there's a little curious squirrel called Nudge that asks about the children's experiences too. And we know that interactive books can be much more powerful, or can be very powerful in terms of children going, oh yeah, this is about me, or I can relate it to my own experiences too. So I wrote that, but then, you know, parenting and children and, you know, being an educator with children, it's not one way, it's not just about children. So I also wrote a parenting handbook, which some nurseries have also bought, so I maybe should have changed the name, but that talks about each of the, I'll just show you it. It talks about each of the areas, you probably can't see it very well, discussed in the 6 children's books with some top tips, but it also talks about the development of the attachment relationship, brain development, emotional development, behavioural development, and just some ways to do it in an attachment-focused relational way. You know, very much with a sort of respectful parent moving, gentle parenting, rather than the more traditional behavioural way, because what we know is that if you just address a behaviour, you're putting a sticking plaster on. If you actually look at what's driving the behaviour, you're helping the child work out what it is too, you're helping them manage their emotions. And historically, we sort of expected them to do it on their own, but we know, I think one of the earlier authors was saying that they can't, you know, they haven't got the brain capacity to do that. So we have to co-regulate with them, we have to manage with them, help them understand, name the emotion. If you name an emotion, it tames it, like physically in the brain. It actually calms your brain down. It helps you connect those vital pathways. So I wrote that parenting book to explain some of those sort of theories behind it, and they're sort of linked up with the books.
Wow,
that's background in a nutshell.
Wow. Okay, and that's all sorts.
There we go, done.
There's so much to unpick there. The naming to tame thing. Perhaps we'll come back to that, but I just want to take you right back, because of relevant to working with authors, as we have done over the last few days. The idea, if you've got a story, you're better able to process whatever's in that story, whatever happened to you as part of that story. And we talk about the story within the story, and so many of the authors that we've talked to have had their own story and have used it as a way of just sort of getting it out there to help others, but clearly it's helping them as well. Right, the very first lady that we spoke to at 9 o'clock, whenever it was yesterday morning. So how do you work with young people in order to help them get their story out and make sense of it? Okay, so it's going to go all psychobabbly now, but we try and create an effective reflective dialogue. So when we're creating a story, we're not just talking about facts, we're trying to broaden it out to talk about the feelings they had around that, what their expectations were, so they can stop and reflect on their experiences. When it's children that I work with who've experienced early adversity, they're scared of doing that, because actually, you said there was a trauma-focused person on just before me, which I missed, but we'll catch up on, because they have learned not to look at their own experiences. They've learned not to feel feelings because they haven't been tended to before. So with them, I very much help them link their body experiences, how they're feeling in their body, how they label their feelings, and then how they link it to their experiences. So I suppose it's broadening it out. And actually what we know in adulthood, when we assess attachment in adulthood, the way we do it is we look at a person's dialogue about their life. We look at their narrative, and we're not looking at the facts, but we're looking at how coherent that narrative is. So I find it absolutely fascinating that it's not so much what happened to you, although of course that makes a difference, but how you story it is about how well you cope. And you story it much better if you've got parents or teachers helping you story it, helping you understand what's going on, helping you know how you're feeling, validating it, acknowledging it, noticing it, because that's how babies learn. They cry, we notice it. We've got mirror neurons. I don't know if you talked about mirror neurons today, but our mirror neurons kick in. Yeah, and then with that empathy, they start to learn other people are holding my feelings. That's okay. I'm okay. And then the parent will soothe them. And they'll learn that when they feel sad because they sort of got that sad feeling, even though they haven't got the word, and it's manageable because someone's there to help them. And that's how you start to identify and then regulate your feelings. And then after years and years of doing that over and over again as a parent, really exhausting, but after years and years of doing that, you then start to self-regulate. You then can notice it yourself. You've got these sort of templates that I'm okay, I can ask others for help. Oh, I'm feeling sad, this is okay. Whereas what we sometimes do is we jump in with, you're okay, rather than, are you okay? Or what's going on? Or just go into school, you'll be fine. So we dismiss because we want to fix and we want everything to be okay. But then we're not validating what they're actually feeling. And then children can get really confused. I've got this sort of funny feeling in my tummy, but mum says I'm okay, but I don't feel okay. So I suppose the stories that I've written are to help parents also have a language for talking to children about feelings. Because I think sometimes it's tricky, and particularly if I'm having a bit of a Barney with one of my children, I don't really feel very empathic. I don't really feel like saying, oh, you okay? I feel like saying, get up to your room, but it doesn't really work. So I try and step back. Not very successfully today, but I suppose that's the aim behind the books. And I'm using the word story as a verb. Story it. Oh
gosh, yes.
Story me. Come on, let's story me. I need help. Story it.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. We talk about storying children's lives. Yeah. Rather than a story. It's I suppose we are all a story, aren't we?
Yeah. I hadn't come across it in a verb in that sort of way, but it's quite empowering.
I might have made it up, to be honest. But,
well, you can have that. You can have it.
I'll take it. No, I mean, there are lots of approaches in psychology. The narrative approach very much is about storying, obviously, by the name of it. But we do talk a lot about storying children's experiences. It's key in psychology. You can't just fix things. You have to make sense of things. Yeah, no, I like that. And can I ask you, because I like to start fights on Twitter. Okay, oh dear.
All behaviour is an indication of an unmet need. As a clinical you're a consultant clinical psychologist, Dr. Sarah Mundy. What's your view?
Oh, I've had a recent argument on Twitter about behaviour. I try and stay away from arguments.
Let's kick it off. Go on, it's Sunday evening. Let's kick it off. The thunder.
I'll tell you what you should read is Beyond Behaviour by Mona Della Hook. It's brilliant. All behaviour is an unmet need. I don't like the phrase of that because it makes it sound as parents as though we're not meeting children's needs. And there's already enough shaming of parents. And I found that in some of the parenting books I've read. I was like, this is not possible. This just does not reflect what parenting is like. All of the theory is you need to be good enough. So you're supposed to not meet needs some of the time. We're only supposed to be tuned into children a certain amount of the time. But yes, in my mind, behaviour is an expression of something. Of course it is. It's a means of communication. Perhaps you can say that's an unmet need, but I don't know how helpful a term it is because it comes very you versus me, the parents versus the children. And actually, what we know about development is about, I'll throw in another word now, intersubjectivity. So what we know, it's about doing things together, going on a journey together. It's we rather than me and you. And so I think even in the language we use about parenting, about child development, we've got to try not to be too, what's the word? One or the other, you or me.
Sort of confrontation, the binary.
That's it, exactly, precisely. Yeah.
And the with, people might have noticed that I'm building a stack of books behind me. Mark Finnis's Independent Thinking on Restorative Practice. And they're getting higher and higher because the school I'm working in Rotterdam has bought a load of them. They're going to hand them out later. And he talks about the with box. You do things 2 things, or you do things 2 children, you do things 4 children. Actually doing things with children, whether you're the parent, it's just so critical. And that seems to, you said, move away from that binary, it's you and them, it's like that together.
Because we're co-constructing narratives throughout, we're making sense of each other. And if we do it together, then we're more likely to be on the same level. Otherwise, we're going to have completely different ideas, completely different stories. And we'll be less likely to meeting needs then. And, we have needs as well as parents, and we are more likely to stay attuned and online if it's reciprocal and if our children are giving us something back too. So and even I don't read to children, I read with children because you're doing it together. It is all about doing things together. That's human relationships, isn't it?
Yeah, and the relational practice. I think you mentioned the word relational earlier, which of course brings us. I could talk to you all day about.
It's fascinating. As long as I don't start any arguments, you're fine.
Clinical psychologist to speak to before, which brings us to this book and the other series in it, and the lovely bear, Bartley Bear. So tell us a little bit about the book, and maybe read us a little bit, and show us where nudge lurks.
Say that again, sorry.
And show us where nudge is lurking.
Okay, so each of the books, I'll just give you a quick tour. Each of the children's books has a bit of an introduction to parents, and then at the end it has top tips for that particular sort of challenge or dilemma. So I think parents sometimes find top tips helpful because they can get bombarded with so much they just want to go, oh, okay. So yes, Bartley is a little bear. This is about him going to school. I won't read the very beginning because my 4-year-old told me where to start. So Bartley is basically refusing to go to school. He's frowning, he's not very happy. Oh, you need to see it, don't you? The petrol stations on the road will fill up as we go, but he refused to leave the house. I don't want to, no. Even though he liked school, leaving Mum was tough. His tummy felt funny and tied in knots. He just didn't feel brave enough. And then we have Nudge coming in. How do you think Bartley's feeling? What could Mum do to help him feel better about going to school? Mum knew that he was worried and gave him a big bear hug. She said he could bring a toy with him. He chose his astronaut bug. It was nearly time to take off. Their journey had begun. Shoes on, off they went. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blast off. What do you think helped Bartley feel okay to leave? What toy would you bring? With Mum and Doug on board, Bartley steered around the bends. They zoomed past a planet and overtook some friends. But when they got to school, Bartley wasn't sure. He stopped, looked up at Mum and hid behind the door. He looks really worried about going in. Maybe he doesn't want to leave his mum. Do you sometimes feel like that? Do the last page. Let's go and see what's out, said Mum. Now, what is there to play? Doug can have a look around. I'm back later today. Poor Bartley's feeling nervous. Did you know that it's normal to feel like that sometimes? So you've got a gist of the sort of validating, and I suppose what I haven't said is I try and reflect the parents taking a PACE model, which is an attachment focus model. So it's got the 4 elements of PACE, which is playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. But also in the second book, it's got Dad getting it wrong. He loses his temper because Bartley really is being very, very obstructive. Because part of parenting is, as I said, getting it wrong. But the key to that is taking responsibility yourself and then repairing that rupture. So I sort of try and demonstrate that in the books as well. So it's been fascinating for me translating psychological theory into a children's story, and getting in a transitional object within the rhyming. It's been great. I've loved it, but it's quite complex.
And so many of the books, at one level, they're just a nice storybook with stuff just, they're nice, they look nice, and it's a nice little story.
Oh, illustrations are great.
But underneath, the illustrations are lovely. Underneath is all this, years and years and years worth of study and research and evidence and experience, professional, clinical, parental, personal, everything, every single word in all of these books, which is amazing. And nudge. So he's there to encourage the conversation between the adult and the child reading the book. He forms the bit, does he?
Initially it was called Mark with a little question mark tail, because I thought that would be quite clever, but Mark as a squirrel didn't quite work. So nudge is just giving a child a nudge to think about their experiences. And we were talking about helping children's story through increasing their reflective function, and reflective function is key to parenting. It's one of the best predictors for a secure attachment. So if we can start children off early reflecting on their experiences, we're setting them up for that, not transgenerational stuff going wrong. You're talking about the epigenesis and transgenerational stuff later on. So he's like a little window into their internal world. So lifting that flap is basically saying, come on, let's explore your own world, but in a fun and engaging way, not in the middle of a huge tantrum where you're saying, what are you feeling now? Because it does, you don't feel like connecting then, so it's trying to address those things that you either don't address or you address in the wrong way at the wrong time through stories, which are fun and engaging. Kids love stories, So and the feedback I've had has just been so beautiful. A little boy takes his to school every day. He's really quite traumatized, and he reads it every day with his one-to-one, has a cup of hot chocolate. And I had a 12-year-old girl reading it who had huge separation anxiety through early experiences, but also kids without that early adversity. It's really helped them get back into preschool, or just sort of make sense of things and start up that conversation with parents. So it's worth the work.
No, I can imagine how well it would go down, in the variety of ways in which it can be used, and all ages as well. And it's just fun, the little flap. And nudge. I get the impression nudge is also nudging the parent as well as the child. Thinking about the child's thoughts and reflecting, but encouraging the parent to reflect on their thoughts as well as to reflect on what they think the child might be thinking. So absolutely,
and in the second book, which is I have to take the headphones off. Sorry about that. I haven't got AirPods. In the second book, stop that now. I don't know how. This is just a proof because it's going to printers tomorrow. I say that every week, and then I find something I want to change. But it says, Dad knew he wasn't helping and made himself calm down. And then under the flap, it says, I think Bartley needed Dad to help him calm down, but Dad got cross instead. Do you think it'll be easier for Bartley now that Dad is feeling okay? So actually, that's a little safe, gentle prompt to parents that you don't lose it.
So you've got other books. So we've got, I've got on the back of here, it says other books in the series consider. So Tricky Behaviour, which is that one, I think. Bedtime routine.
Healthy, this one.
Time for bed, rest your head. Healthy eating. We've touched on eating quite a bit. Eat it, no, it's yuck. Subtitles. Toilet training. You'll be happy without your nappy, which is a t-shirt, if ever there was a toddler. And then another one, the arrival of the new sibling. Hello, little Mr. Meet Your Sister.
Yes, I quite like those sort of titles. I'm very childlike. I just like anything that rhymes and is simple. And those last three aren't out yet. Well, actually, these two are just going to print tomorrow. Yeah. And then come September, I will be working on the next three, hopefully to get them out early next year, because people are now saying, can't we get the series? I'm like, well, not quite yet. I haven't quite finished them.
Why did your son choose that page? Your son is 4. Why did he start there? Was it the toy?
I think it was the petrol. Oh, no, it was that I don't want to. No, I think he liked the big shouty.
Yeah,
I don't want to. I mean, he's a bit cross with me because in Time for Bed, Rest Your Head, I put a submarine rather than a space rocket in it. So he's a little bit cross, and I hadn't realised quite how much I was talking to him about the books until I started sort of reciting it in my head, or out loud the other day when I was putting him to bed, and he actually said it all along with me. I was like, oh dear, I think I might have said this too much. He might be a bit saturated with Bartley, but yeah.
So I think the books are available via the Roving Bookshop. We've done a deal for the bookstore, for the Independent Children's Book Festival.
Yeah.
How can people get hold of you? Have you got your own website? Are you on social media?
So most active on Instagram. I'm useless technologically, but my friend does it all for me. So I send her things to post and she makes them look nice. So yeah, my website is parentingthroughstories.com. I'm parenting_stories at Instagram. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn, but not quite so active. You can order through Amazon, but only UK. I've got a Shopify account, but quite often people just contact me. I mean, it's amazing. I've got orders from 18 different countries. So I did a little map the other day. It's amazing. But a lot of them, they just contact me and I just do them a nice deal and pop it in the post because I'm so excited to get them to sort of Lebanon and the Netherlands and Sri Lanka. I sent one to Sri Lanka.
And do you do workshops and things? Do you speak? Do you go out?
I'm not many. I mean, because I'm my day job, I still do my day job, so I still work clinically during the day. So this is more of my sort of nighttime job. Yeah. I do lives. I've been commissioned to write a few articles now for magazines, which is great. I'm doing some work with families and edX education, and I'm having some conversations with quite a big sort of chain of nurseries at the moment about supporting them to develop a training package, basically based on this, but for early years professionals, because they really liked it because it's so short and sweet but clear. So yeah, I do a bit of training in schools just generally, but yeah.
All right, that's brilliant. We've covered so much in 20. Oh, you've got 23 minutes. You've had a couple of minutes extra. Thank you. That's okay. Thank
you so much. You deserve a stiff drink tonight, I think.
Yes, I think I've had lots of lectures on nutrition, but I think the gin and tonic might be earned tonight.
Yes, and there's a good football match tonight as well.
Well, I watched the Netherlands. Hopefully nobody will tell me the score before I get home like yesterday.
No, but it's Portugal-Belgium tonight. So
that's great. Right. Yeah. Right.
I haven't seen the Netherlands. We won't talk about it. No spoilers. Thanks so much, Ian.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Okay, see you then.
Bye.
Bye.